Okay, so welcome back to the second episode of Gladiator Diaries with myself and, of course, the main man, Moddy B. Before we get stuck into any topics, mate, how you doing? How was your week? Update on the nose?
Well, update on those, as you can see, plaster is off. Technically, I still have to kind of wear it when I'm training. So, but obviously, if I can afford to not have to wear it for a little bit to do some, some media type ventures like this, then of course I will. I will take full advantage of that. So, as you can see, it's a lot straighter. Breathing's coming back. Had some hard sessions this week, so it's good, mate. Everything is spot on. The modeling career begins once again.
Absolutely. How was your weekend? Were you able to catch any of the fights with them being on at an earlier time?
Which fights were on this weekend? Just remind me real quick, and then I can.
The Singapore card with Max Holloway.
Yes. I saw a couple of them. So obviously, I watched the Max Holloway fight, and of course, I watched the Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann fight. So those two were kind of the ones that I really had my eye on, and I'm pretty sure I've seen some highlights of some of the others. So if you give me throw me some fights my way, I'll definitely be able to tell you. But from off the top of my head, those are the only two that really stand out to me.
Well, that works, I suppose, because I guess the most important one to talk about, that obviously Max looked good, but I think everyone expected that, right? Like,
Yeah,
I didn't expect him to finish Zombie like that. I didn't see that coming, but
he, he said
most
something
people were
about.
predicting.
Yeah, he said something about. Oh yeah, you all thought I had pillow hands. And then next thing you know, he goes and knocks him out. I mean, it was a firefight. Korean Zombie, he's the type of guy to really walk into the fire. So it was a very dramatic ending and a very well deserved retirement for Zombie. Very emotional, obviously, but he's had a hell of a career. Put on some amazing fights.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't even thought about it. I just thought, I'll see if you were able to catch any of them because they were on at a good time. But of course, the Smith and Span fight is something that we should actually touch on because it is actually relevant to your
No,
division with two of those guys in there. I was surprised when this fight got booked, considering they only fought like a year ago. I think.
was it
Um,
a year ago?
I think it was like a year ago when
Okay.
Smith submitted him. I'm gonna double check that real quick, but it felt very soon to see those guys back in there. But um, what did you make of the fight? And I know that it was a close fight, but I think most people had it scored for Anthony Smith.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I watched the fight. I mean, very, very good fight. A high skill level. Um, Shows a bit of certain bits of improvement in Anthony Smith's game. It shows that he's still, a guy who's at the top of the division in terms of light heavyweight, in terms of what he's been able to do. I mean, Ryan Spann is no joke. I mean, you saw that knockout against Dominic Reyes, so he's quite a formidable opponent. So yeah, I mean, it kind of I expected maybe Span to be a little bit better than he showed, considering like the his last couple of performances. So, but overall, I mean, like I say, it just shows that Anthony Smith still knows what he's doing. He's got a very good skill set all round, and obviously he's still dangerous and still willing to put on big performances. So yeah, it's exciting because these are going to be potential opponents of mine. So I'm definitely obviously keeping a close eye on them.
Yeah, I just checked. The first fight between them happened 2 years ago. So at this
Yeah,
point, 2 years blends into one.
yeah, exactly. Do you know what I mean? It's all the
It's
same
difficult.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, even still, strange to see two guys run it back 2 years on, considering the first fight wasn't close, like at all.
Yeah,
First
yeah.
round finish, so it was still a strange one. I have no idea where this part of this conversation is going to go, but the highlight of my weekend, I was in London to go and watch pro wrestling at Wembley Stadium. Are you much of a pro wrestling guy?
Was it AEW by
Yeah.
any chance? Yeah. I mean, Listen, I think it's amazing. I think the acrobatics, the acting, the skill, everything to put together is the truest form of entertainment. Really, I mean, it's kind of yeah, it's like it's almost at the pinnacle of trying to purposely trying to entertain fans because fighting it will only entertain fans through the violence and through what happens, but this is like purposely being drawn out. So I mean, I always used to watch it as a kid. I don't pay as close attention to it right now, but of course, any time it's on, like kind of in the background stuff, like me and Will actually would watch it quite a lot, like actually on Fight Week and stuff like that. It almost gives you motivation and inspiration, like these guys, like
Mm.
the way they're conducting themselves, and like I say, it's all about entertainment. It's like putting on a show, like being a bit mad, being a bit crazy. Do you know what I mean? And these are things that definitely you can learn from. So yeah, and of course it's bloody hilarious to watch some of the stuff. And yeah, like I say, I wish I could do some of those backflips and leapfrogs. And sometimes you think, how the hell are these guys even surviving after some of these things? So yeah, it's remarkable stuff for sure.
Yeah, like you mentioned like watching some guys and being like, how do they do it? Like I've watched WWE ever since I was a kid, and Logan Paul currently is one of their biggest stars. And I don't know if you've seen any of the clips of him, but he's so good, like insanely acrobatic, that it
Yeah.
legitimately, there's been multiple times watching one of his matches where I'll turn to my friends and say, is pro wrestling just easy now? Because he makes it look easy. And he hasn't been doing it for very long at all. Like it's insane if you haven't seen some of the stuff that he does.
Well, if you think he actually had like an actual Olympic style wrestling sort of background, you see him like doing sparring with I think it's Paulo Costa, and like like that dude can wrestle, like actually like legitimately wrestle. You know what I mean? And obviously you have to be quite athletic and acrobatic even just to do that, even to do some of the movements, some of the flips, some of the you know the training in itself is very grueling. So the fact that he's able to do all of that, I think it translates and blends very well. And I'm sure he must have spent a lot of time like freaking doing all this crazy stuff anyways in his bedroom when he was younger. So it's mad that he's just able to put it into full effect. Yeah, he's obviously very good, and he's an entertainer, so that's what makes him also very good. I think guys like him, are sort of built for wrestling. Maybe not so much for boxing, but for for wrestling, 100%.
Yeah, I know as well that Paul Craig and Chris Bungard do a bit of wrestling on the side as a tag team. But we ever get a scenario where you and Will get in the ring? Because I
A
feel like
hundred
Will is
percent. It's
built
funny. It's
for
funny
it.
you say that. Like me and Will would like jokingly just sit there and just talk about that and say, "Oh yeah, well, imagine me and you being tag team champions of the WWE, or it's gonna happen and stuff like this." And to be honest, like hell yeah, sky's the limit. We're both very athletic guys. I'd like to think we bring the entertainment factor. We're both crazy. We're both wild. We're both out there. So you know, I think it could definitely be something to be seen for sure in the future. But of course, we've got to get our names out there MMA wise in order for that to happen. So, but yeah, like I say, that is going to happen. In MMA. So why not? Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that watch that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of money involved as well. So why not earn a couple extra bags by suplexing someone in a freaking wrestling ring? You know what I mean? And chat shit on the mic as well whilst we're doing it.
This is gonna have to be something that comes back up when we get Will on. Because I feel like he is so like he is already like you could put him in a wrestling ring without any training, and I feel like he would pull it off. Like I just feel like he is one of those people that would take to it.
Oh
Like,
yeah, 100%. He's definitely an entertainer. You get him on a mic on an interview after a fight, he's he's an absolute madman, an absolute nutter, and I freaking love it. And that's why me and him get along so well. We're just like so I guess you could say we're both very eccentric, very vibrant characters. So yeah, definitely you put him out there, that's where he would thrive because he just as I do, we love like facing fear head on and facing danger and nervousness and craziness and a lot of volatility. So yeah, definitely something for the future. Got to think of what name we put ourselves, but the Phoenix and the Dragons. So we have to be something along those lines. You know what I mean? Or like I say, the Baltic Gladiator, along with something. We would think of something. Like I say, I'll leave the name producing to others. I'll do the acrobatic and entertainment part of it.
We should stay on Cage Warriors for the moment, as kind of the first thing to touch on, because we got UFC Paris this weekend, which should be a fun card. The last Paris event was fantastic. I was debating going over to watch it because it's not
Why not,
too
mate?
it's not too expensive. I mean, especially with the London prices, it really isn't very expensive compared to that. So I was debating it, but the way the card has worked out, there's now a run on the prelims of 3 Cage Warriors fighters in a row, which is lovely the way that that's like come around, because it means I'll tune into that, and then if I have to go and do something else, I can, and I'll come back to those fights that I miss at a later date. So we'll go through them, I guess, one at a time and talk about where they're at in their careers, starting with a guy that I'm sure we will speak to these guys at some point in the future, but this is definitely one of the guys that I've had on my list of guests that I think would be really interesting for us to chat to, being Reese McKee,
Yeah.
because he has followed a somewhat similar path to your own in going to the UFC and then going back to Cage Warriors and proving that he does belong, and then coming back and a real statement fight this for him, to finally prove what he's been saying about that he does belong in the UFC, and that the first time around he didn't really get a fair shake of things, which you can't really argue when you look at who he had to fight.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because he's actually been a supporter of mine as well, and he was also inspired by my story. We've exchanged a couple of messages on Instagram. Absolutely lovely fellow, obviously extremely hard worker, and definitely very deserving of his shot to be back in the UFC. And I'm very happy for him, and I'm very happy that he was able to follow, like I say, a very similar trajectory. So we've definitely got a very relatable cause here, and he's also still got a very tough opponent for his second UFC run. But I feel like I also had a very tough opponent for my first fight back in the UFC. So I feel that this is where he will shine. This is in Europe. This is his technically home court advantage, just because he's only have to travel like two hours on a plane, or 1 hour, 2 hours on a plane, something like that. So he's going to have that advantage in terms of jet lag and stuff like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But he's leveled up massively. You see over the course of his Cage Warriors run, after his first UFC run. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think he's going to go out there with a lot to prove, and that's what's going to make him perform really well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely rooting for him.
It feels like with Reese, again, with those kind of similarities between his and your careers. I remember you said last week, we didn't really explore it too much, but about this time around taking your time, so that you're not hitting those upper opponents in the light heavyweight division too quickly, which of
Yeah.
course, like people get into the UFC and they're like, here I am, let's go,
Yeah.
and it tends to be, some fighters that works for perfectly, and other fighters, it's a build to get to that point, which it should be. That's the reason that the rankings are there in the first place, right? But with Reese, it feels like that so much. Obviously, coming in on late notice to fight Hamzat Chimaev, no one really knew what to expect. I mean, people knew Chimaev was good, but no one knew he would go on to be like this good. So that's a tough one. And then I remember the second fight he had just felt a little bit too much like he hadn't had any time to shake off those kind of UFC jitters in that first fight, because it was so one-sided from the start. And that second fight was kind of like his actual debut. And then because he lost that, he got cut. And so it really felt like he never found his feet. Partly because of the caliber of opponents he was facing. And whilst you're right to point out that, there are no easy fights in the UFC, he's still got a tough guy to take on. But it does really feel like this is where he can actually make an impression in the UFC like he wanted to the first time around and didn't really get that opportunity.
Yeah, I believe that his skill set has just developed massively. Again, probably maybe mindset, maybe striking. There's certain other things that like technically you can see he's like much better like than he was in the first run. He's got a lot more confidence about him. He's older, wiser, more mature. These are all things that these are also things that you've got to sort of take into account. Like, his skill set was raw in comparison to what it is now. His mindset was raw in comparison to what it is now. He had two very tough opponents, same as I did. I mean, obviously Hamzat Chimaev being a freaking absolute animal, and then Morono was also very good in his own right as well. He went on a bit of a run after he beat McKee as well. So I feel like he just learnt the appropriate lessons, decided, let me go back to the drawing board, let me figure all this stuff out, figure where I went wrong, and we're going to make it happen. And then he just believed in himself. And like I say, I think seeing things like, maybe my story as a bit of a bit of a route for inspiration as well for him, to show him that, yes, it can be done. Do you know what I mean? And like I say, I was very happy for him when he got the call, because it's just mad. You almost feel like you feel so happy for him. Do you know what I mean? Like genuinely, like for someone to go through the same thing that I had to go through, you really do admire that. And the thing is, because I know how hard it was to get over mental barriers and stuff like this in order to get to that. That's why I admire him as a man even more. The fact that he was also able to overcome this, and it just shows he's got a hell of a lot of mental fortitude, and he's he's always been talented. It's always been talented since day one, and now he gets to really show it. And like you say, be confident, be brash, and go in there and really, fight the way that he knows he's capable. I think in the first two fights he didn't fight the way that he knew he was capable, and now he gets a chance to do that. And like I say, it's very interesting for us to see his journey unravel as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, how many other guys have done what you and McKee have done in terms of being able to get back there through
And
having
Smith,
to take somewhat of a step back. Yeah, true.
That's one that stands out to me.
There'll be a ton, I would imagine, like Brandon Moreno is the one that comes to mind for me, who left the UFC and had to go and fight on LFA and then come back in the UFC and end up becoming champion. But like for the UK, like, well, not necessarily the UK, but Europe. I know Nicholas Dalby did it. He went back to Cage Warriors.
Nicholas Dalby is another one that I can
UFC.
really relate to. I actually really like him as well. We often chat. We got to chat in Vegas. We're fighting on the same card as well in our next fight. So he's an absolute great guy. And for me, he did it at a very late stage in his career. Do you know what I mean? Like he had his fights earlier than myself, I would say, like in the UFC the first run. Then he had to go through like quite a bit of a turbulent time, and go through a massive run in Cage Warriors, that very memorable fight as well against Houston, and then got his own way back. Like, I'm talking, he must have got back in when he was like 33 or something. I'm not 100% sure, but like he did it at a very late stage in his career. So for him also to overcome the mental demons that he definitely 100% had, you can see how amazing his aura, his presence and his aura is something that really resonates with me, and something that I really, again, also admire, because you see how happy and like open and confident Nicholas Dalby is. And I love that, because there's a massive contrast to when he was even commentating on Cage Warriors to then, fighting now back in the UFC. So again, massive credit to him. It's amazing to have to have guys that are in the circuit that you're also like kind of cool with. Do you know what I mean? Like we're all friendly with each other. We're always like giving each other like support, and like, oh, let's go, my man. Like do the job, man. Go and knock his ass out. So it's nice to have that to have that bit of support in Europe. Like you got guys that are going along the same path as you, and you can you can just sort of like almost just kind of sit. It's like when when the lads are just sitting there, like it's almost like you're in a pub, like when you're 16, you're like grabbing a beer, talking about the good old days. It's almost like this, except we're living it right now. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like there's something to that where on the American side of the sport, because there's so many big gyms but they're so spread out across the US, it doesn't feel quite the same thing, especially with Cage Warriors being like for so long the clear route to get to the UFC, that so many guys pass through it, that it feels like there is like that, like it's why we'll always end up chatting about Cage Warriors guys that have got fights coming up, because it's like a Cage Warriors brotherhood, you know. It's like you
Yeah,
fight on the same cards, and not just fighting on the same cards. It's like the way that their events play out every couple of months. It's like you're on the same path as the people
yeah,
around you. Like this just popped into my head as well, of another person that I'm sure would be great to get on, would be Mason Jones, who
yeah,
is kind of in that process himself at the moment of coming back to Cage Warriors. And there was a period there where it didn't really, or maybe he could provide insight into this, but it didn't look like the path for him was clear after leaving the UFC. You know, there was a bit of a break there. People weren't too sure what was going to happen and things like that. And then now he's back in Cage Warriors and hopefully going to find his way back to the top pretty soon. But that would be an interesting one as a guy that is kind of on that path that you and Reese and Nicholas have all walked down.
yeah, 100%. I mean, again, obviously an extremely talented kid. Very, very unfortunate first run that he had. He had a lot of very good performances. You could see he's definitely UFC level. He just, couldn't get the result. And obviously that no contest made things a little bit annoying for him. So yeah, and like I say, he's just going to develop, grow, mature, you know, kind of capitalize on certain things that he couldn't do the first time round. He's going to be older. He's going to be better, more athletic, stronger. Just a complete level up from his first one. I think that's the ongoing theme between all of us, is the insane amount of leveling up that we're able to do in between those two runs. And obviously when you're on the UFC's radar, that means you're on their radar. So as soon as you start doing well and start proving yourself, so okay, we'll give him another shot. So it'll be amazing to see him back into the UFC, and I definitely think Mason Jones will be another one that will get himself back into the UFC, because he genuinely is of that skill level.
Yeah, I think so too. I suppose we've got a little thing with having spoken about Reese, and then you kind of got a different route through Cage Warriors for each of these guys, different stories. Next one up is the former Cage Warriors bantamweight champion Calvin Loughran, who tore through Cage Warriors. Like he made it really clear from the very start that he wasn't going to be around very long, and he did just that. And it seemed like he got better every time. And so I'm really interested to see how he does in the UFC, because the man is one of the most self-confident people I've seen come through Cage Warriors. But he backs it up every single time, and he always talks a big game and then does show the evolutions in his game. Like clearly every time has been better. Like not even just little bits in his game. Like I remember watching him when he was an amateur still fighting in Cage Warriors, and like the level that he has come from to be at now is insane.
Yeah.
Like so, like nearly of course little aspects of his game are the same, but a really different fighter. I think now, at least that's how he looked in Cage Warriors making his debut. He's had a weird circumstance with this card that again speaks to his self-confidence, because he was supposed to open the main card against one opponent, and then that opponent was put into a different fight, and he was put into a different fight as well, like this week. So now he has arguably a harder opponent, and he's on the prelims instead of being on the main card. Which I think all of that just speaks to again his insane. Well, not insane, but like I don't mean insane like he's misguided, because the man backs it up, but insane like the levels of self confidence that he has to say like, oh well, we're just gonna roll into fight week and we'll do it anyway. You know.
You got to think of it though as well, mate. You've been training so hard for so long, and it's like when something goes wrong or something falls through, it's mad because this guy that he was supposed to fight, I swear he's fighting on the same card still.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's fighting a different opponent.
Yeah, so it's just a mad one, you know, when you put in all that effort and all that, and yeah, he's got an even tougher opponent. But you know, I guess this is similar to me as well in terms of my first UFC run. I was supposed to fight Vinicius Moreira, who, like, let's be honest, he's not exactly the best fighter. You know, very solid ground game, but absolutely no stand up, right? And then they changed it to Andreas Michailidis, who's like, you know, one of the top guys in Europe, like absolutely, obviously weight class below, but still absolute animal. And like that, to have that kind of switch of an opponent completely drastically changing what you're focusing on, it is a mad one. But because you're so destined to do your debut, you've been training so hard, you want to show people, you know, what you're capable of, and it's a way to get your name out there, and it's a great opportunity. Look, you beat someone who's really good, then you're right in the top of the ranks. Do you know what I mean? You're right there, out with the best of them, and you know, you can really put a statement for yourself. Also, it's mad. I think he's the only other fighter. Well, not the only other fighter, but the only one that sticks out in my head in terms of Europe. Paddy Pimblett was. I think his first fight was on the main card, and so obviously Kalen was supposed to have his fight on the main card, and yeah, now it's got moved, but in a way, it's still a featured prelim, I believe, right? So
No, he's not, which is
not.
why it feels like a bit of a hit.
Ah,
He's won before that.
Charrier's the featured prelim. Got you. Well, look, either way, at the end of the day, it just, I guess you could say, gives him a bit of the better sort of baby steps transition into the UFC, instead of going like you know, swap bang right on the main card, you know, spotlights all over you. At least he's like, okay, cool, I'm just gonna ease my way in. We've got a nice, good top high point prelim spot on the card, and you know, it's our way to really, you know, get your name out there. So, like I say, he's got a very tough opponent as his exchange almost, but with the confidence that he has, with the training that he's had, he's going to go in there with full force, full effort, full confidence, and he wants to put on a show, you know, and he wants to put on a show in front of a European crowd, and obviously the whole of Europe is going to be backing him. So I bet you that's going to be an absolutely amazing experience for him, and yeah, I also wish him the best. I know he's capable of a hell of a lot, as he's shown throughout the whole of Cage Warriors. And if you think about it, you know, he's pretty much beaten the best in Europe. So now it's time to prove himself on the world stage, and I know he's going to be really amped up to be able to do that.
Yeah, I know we touched on it super briefly in the last episode when we talked about your fight in Brazil coming up, but is card placement something that you spend too much energy into thinking about when you're looking at where your fight is going to be on a certain night and how that can potentially affect how many people see your fight and things like that?
Yeah, like my last fight. I mean, first fight on the prelims, a light heavyweight fight where one man had just beaten Tyson Pedro and the other man had like completely dominated the guy for 3 rounds. My story in itself, I was put on a featured prelim, and then to go to the first fight on the Fight Pass prelims, I just thought it was a little bit weird. You know what I mean? And yeah, like you say, not many people's eyes were on that fight, and you know, I definitely would have got a lot more traction had it been later on in the card. But at the end of the day, does it matter in terms of all people see is the result? All people see is the highlights. All people see really, you know, when you look at it over the grand scheme of things, they just see, is it a win or is it a loss? If it's a win, up you go. Time for you to get more promoted. Time for you to sell a little bit more. Time for you to get seen as the man that could perhaps bring a McGregor-esque type rise to the top of the rankings. And then, you know, and if you lose, no one gives a shit about you. They kind of throw you off to the side and forget about you. So, you know, all you got to do is make sure that you win, because if you keep winning, that's when you're going to get more attention. So I just like to see a slow progression, you know, like imagine you're starting off on prelims, like early prelims, then you go up a little bit to to higher on the card prelims and then maybe the main card. That would be the nice sort of most fluid transition upwards into a card. But at the same time, you know, you fight good opponents, you put on spectacular performances, you will get pushed a lot quicker. Like Paddy Pimblett has been on a main card every single fight. So it just depends how marketable you are, how much you can sell, and you know. And like I say, I'm hoping over the course of time, I will be able to sell myself even more so. And I think just the thing is, like, get me on the damn mic. Do you know what I mean? You know, get us to do podcasts like this, or you know, come let's do a day in the life or something. You know, just so people can see who I really am and stuff like that. And I think that's the same for most fighters. But yeah, placement just affects, especially viewership in the Americas, right? In the American segment, a lot of people don't. Not to say that people don't pay attention to the first couple of fights, but you know, obviously more eyes are on the later fights. But combined with you winning, and then obviously where you are on the card, that's what brings stardom. So, and you know, you bring a spectacular knockout, they're going to replay that shit over and over and over again. So, you know, ultimately comes down to performance, and then that will push you. But yes, it shows your relevance and your importance in the card if you are higher up. It's just how it is. It's just how life is. But this is what we're all aiming to get to, and it's like I say, it's exciting.
Yeah, suppose the one benefit in it I saw for the last fight was that, you know, if when they released the bout order and stuff like that, and I'm having a look and I'm seeing, you know, which have we got any UK guys on this card or European guys I'm going to tune in for, as much as I'm like, I would have preferred it. I mean, the thing that I don't understand is he had just fought in the tough finale. So, like, you would assume that the majority of American fans, I don't know how well that series of Tough did, but you know, the UFC want it to do well. They want Tough to do well. So you would think that then people who do well on Tough would be get a little bit more shine. But from a UK fight fan perspective, first fight of the night means that I don't have to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch the fight. So there's no way I'm going to miss it. Whereas, you know,
Yeah,
if people have something to do on the next day and stuff like that, but you can say I'm on at 11 p.m. on Fight Pass or like 12 midnight on TNT Sport, you know, that's not too bad. So
yeah,
I would say I think there's a benefit to card placement even when you do get low down. You know,
yeah,
there's a benefit and a drawback to being anywhere on, like, even being the main event. You gotta wait until the
yeah.
late hours of the evening to actually fight. Like, I think there's a downside to everything, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as we just spoken, there's many positives and many negatives of every which way that you go, whether you're early on the card or late on the card. But as as I mentioned, ultimately it's down to performance. If you have the performance, and then you talk your shit on the mic, you say what you got to say, you do your interviews with full vigor and enthusiasm, then like things will happen for you. And if you're relatable to people, even more so. And for sometimes, if you're very unrelatable to people in terms of, like, maybe people think that you're a cock, then then that can also push you, and playing like almost like the heel. But yeah, man. I mean, to be honest, it was quite weird being the first fight on, because usually I'm watching the screen, watching another fight, or like, and then you're like, okay, now I'm watching the fight that's before mine. I know that as soon as there's a finish here, I'm on. Whereas this time it's like there is no fight to watch. You're just literally, I'm the first one up. So, but luckily that didn't affect me at all. When I went out there, in terms of how I felt. So at the end of the day, a fight's a fight. So it doesn't matter whether you're at the top or the end, you got to go and fight. So.
Yeah, I mean, this segues perfectly into talking about the third and final Cage Warriors guy on this card, because you talk about card placement and kind of relatability, but the potential that the UFC sees in the draw that you have, and there is no doubt that Morgan Charrier has the potential to go on to be it. Like, there's a legitimate conversation for him being the most popular French fighter on this card, which is crazy because Cyril Gane fought John Jones like last time out.
Yeah,
Like,
I know exactly. Yeah, the
but
goat. Yeah,
Charrier, man, like, I can't recall seeing a guy in Cage Warriors who, from early on, it was like he's probably too good to be in this. But he ended up staying for such a long time, which I don't think is a slight on him. It speaks to the strength of the division he was in with Paul Hughes and Jordan Vucenic, who all three are UFC caliber. So it was just the way things played out. But now he's finally here. It always felt like all he needed was a couple of wins in a row, and the UFC were gonna like there was no way they weren't going to sign him because of how popular he is. So he finally got it, and I'm so happy to see him there. And that feature prelim spot as well is going to work perfectly for him.
Oh yeah, 100%. Obviously, he's got a lot of following on social media. I think that's where he built most of his. Uh, he built a lot of his traction just solely off of his empire outside of the cage. He obviously put on the performances inside the cage, but the amount of following that he has, I think he did some videos with some YouTubers, which then absolutely went mad and went viral. And the next thing you know, he's increased his following. He's done stuff outside of the cage. Done the appropriate stuff media wise to get himself out there. And clearly, he's very talented. And it's obviously really good to see him out there as well. But I must say one thing. If Morgan Charrier has got signed, why has Jordan Vucenic not got signed? You know what I mean? Like, I understand, obviously, you also look to like Paul Hughes as well. But look, even Jordan, since that Paul Hughes fight, he's won 2 fights since then, and he's finished both guys. And he was like highly tutored as well to be the next big thing. And, he'd won fight after fight after fight, and he's got quite a big following as well. Like, bloody, he's got 10,000 more followers than me on Instagram. Do you know what I mean? I understand, obviously, Morgan Charrier has got way more following. Like, I'm talking like he's got like hundreds of thousands. But this is the name of the sport. This is the name of the game. As much as your skill, clearly he's a very likable guy, especially in the French scene, in the European scene. Like I say, doing YouTube videos and stuff for this. So he really he's done this the right way. He's got his name out there. He's he put the skills out. A lot of his performances, he's done really well. They've been very entertaining, very exciting. And then obviously he's got a lot of people watching him, a lot of people supporting him. He's got like this whole aura about him. You know what I mean? And like he had like that mask that he used to put on every time he'd come into the cage. So clearly he's very confident as well on the mic as well. So, I think like it was only a matter of time. It's almost like the triple threat, isn't it? The Cage Warriors featherweight division, Morgan Charrier, Paul Hughes and Jordan Vucenic. It's like they're all going to go to the UFC. And I think it really is just a matter of time for the other two to be signed. But, the fact that Morgan's there and, him putting on a big performance as well will kind of show the level of Paul Hughes and Jordan Vucenic. So it's very exciting times, and like I say, he's always very entertaining. I do love watching him fight. So like I say, I hope he goes and absolutely smashes it as well, and especially in front of his hometown crowd. That place is going to be featured prelim. Like, it's like when I fought Tyson Pedro and everyone was going mad for him. They were like, I really want to watch this featured prelim. It's kind of the same here. So he's going to get an emphatic reception, and I'm sure he will thrive off of that.
Yeah, I haven't really ever thought about this like too much, but I interviewed Morgan ages ago for when I was still doing stuff for Cage Warriors, and kind of spoke to him a little bit more in depth about what it is that got him so popular in France, and never really looked at it this way, but he was kind of ahead of the curve on the whole influencer meets fighter thing. Like, he was collaborating with YouTubers and guys that stream on Twitch, and they were kind of helping him, and then he was helping them, and they were like combining their platforms, and that's what made him so popular, which is interesting to see that happen outside of the US, because of course you hear about all of those guys, but you might not hear about the social media influencers that are big in France and things like that. So to see it play out in Cage Warriors has been a fascinating thing to watch his rise. But I do agree with you that it is, even though it isn't strange because he has such a high profile, to see him signed before and debut before Paul and Jordan is strange, the way that things have played out. I remember hearing Graham talk about maybe the issue with Paul Hughes is he hasn't got finishes lately, and that speaks again because he's been fighting Jordan Vucenic and Morgan Charrier, and those guys are so hard to put away. But Vucenic, like you said, has got back-to-back finishes.
Yeah, so
and looked solid in both of them. And like you said, when it comes to those London events, draws a big crowd. Like he has really turned those events at the Indigo into like home shows for him. So it does feel. I thought he would have got the call up for the last London card. I think he was unfortunate not to do that. Maybe because they already had Mick Parkinson debuting and Sean O'Bannon. Maybe that's why. But I think he's been so unlucky to not get it already.
He has, but trust me, his luck will shift. His time will come. He's clearly at that skill level, and he's even better than when he was when he fought Paul Hughes in that fight for the belt. So believe me when I say it's only a matter of time. It's his path. It's his chosen. This is how it's meant to happen for him. He is going to go to the UFC. It's just a question of when. Even if he has to have one more fight in Cage Warriors and then get signed, so be it. He's going to build up his experience, build up his talent level, and he's really come along mentally. Like, you see him in the training room. His, like I say, his mental strength and his confidence as well, and his skill set just improving and being even more willing to learn as well. It's amazing to see, and I know that he's definitely gonna make big waves. He's already made big waves, especially in the European scene, and I know when he goes to the UFC, he will do the same. He's definitely of that level. So, like I say, it's only a matter of time. That's his path. His path is going to be to go to the UFC. It's just a matter of when, like I say, and he's enjoying the process, staying sharp, staying ready. You know what I mean? Relax. It's like, okay, cool. We'll just keep fighting. We'll keep picking them off, and then when they want me, I'm right here.
I really hope that he doesn't have to go through Contender Series, because as much as I like watching the Contender Series, man, when it's fighters you like, it is so nerve-wracking. Like it like not only have they got to win the fight and look impressive, they still might not get a contract. Like it's horrible. Like it's so much fun, but it's such a tough process to watch, and going through it every season with Cage Warriors guys, like especially we spoke about it with George last week, and it would be the same with Jordan, where it's like, what else does he need to prove? He's proven that there are guys that Morgan Charrier is in the UFC and he's beaten him before. So like, what else does he need to prove in order to go straight in at this point? So I hope he just gets to go. He has the fan base for it as well.
I think
he will put him on one of those cards, and
I think he will. I think he will. I mean, look, I think for him to go to Contender Series at this point would just be like what the hell's going on over here? Do you know what I mean? It's like he's already proven himself on a number of occasions. I mean, if he has to do that, then again, so be it. Like maybe that's just his path that he has to go down. I do think he's definitely skillful enough, and the fact that he's already been on the UFC's radar, anyways, just proves that he could be another guy that gets in straight away. And even the fact Morgan Charrier got signed as well, so he didn't have to go through Contender Series. And you look at both of their resumes. I mean, like I say, just as you said, it sort of speaks for itself. So I mean, it is very nerve-wracking, but for me personally, I think they will definitely sign him straight up, like without a doubt. He's got the aura, he's got the look, he's got the following, and he's clearly got the skill set. So you put those all together, shake them up in a bag, you got Jordan Vucenic, and I definitely think his time will come. Like I say, it's all just a matter of time.
Yeah, it really feels like it for him, especially. So yeah, I hope so. I wanted to touch on something that we spoke about in regards to those kind of in the conversation of card placement and things like that. And in terms of having that kind of profile and social media following, and the way that you get that through just putting on good performances and stuff like that, and how that can overwrite something like card placement anyway, because nobody cares if you're the first fight or the last fight when they're scrolling through social media and they see a knockout, right? I'll follow on from this question, but I'll ask you this first. Do you feel like you get the amount of love from the UK MMA fans that you think you should?
I just think not many people know about me yet. You know, I do get quite a lot of love. I've been stopped a couple of times in the street, like people recognize me, which I thought was quite, you know, it's quite a humbling experience because I've never had that before. I've never had that sort of. I thought like, like surely you lot don't even know about me. I haven't even made that much, you know, I haven't made that much noise. I think a lot of people are drawn to the story though. You know, I think people are drawn to what I have done. A lot of people knew me to be, for the longest time, I was that guy that got his knee smashed out by Khalil Roundtree, and now I'm starting to sort of rewrite the story a little bit and carry it on, you know. So I feel like, now this is just my own personal opinion, and don't get me wrong, I love the Lithuanian fan. I've had many messages from Lithuanians, and they've been extremely nice and kind. I've had a lot of hate messages as well. Don't get me wrong, but for the most part, you know, Lithuanians have been very supportive of me, and I really appreciate them. And it's mad because, you know, I can understand it, okay, but I just can't speak it very well. So obviously, I seem like a bit of an outsider, a bit of a foreigner, you know, Lithuanian name. But for the UK fans, if we're talking specifically, you know, but obviously my heritage is very strong with Lithuania. You know, I often, you know, the Baltic Gladiator. I mean, well, how much more Lithuanian can you possibly be with that nickname? Do you know what I mean? Or in terms of Eastern Europe, you know. But a Lithuanian name, Modestas Bukauskas. There's not many English people. Actually, there are, in fact, zero English people called that. It's mad because they always seem to think, oh bloody hell, this guy's going to be. I think we spoke about this maybe in the last episode, but it's like, you know, I come out with a British accent. You know, everyone's expecting me to have like some Eastern European, like strong, like almost like Russian type accent. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's mad when as soon as they start hearing me talking, and then they're like, "Oh mate, hold on a minute, I'll actually be able to understand this guy, and he might have something to say." You know, I don't know. Maybe they think I'm a little bit witty. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they just think I'm an absolute moron. Who knows? Either way, you know, gets people talking, right? But see, this is the thing. Just get me on a mic on a UK show. Get me on a UK show and get me on the mic after a big win, and then trust me, I'll be able to sell myself to people. People just don't know yet, you know. Lithuanian name, Lithuanian background, Lithuanian flag as my, you know, as sort of like my walking out stuff, like even on the stats when you see on the screen. But then you hear me talk, and you know, we have a conversation, and then next thing you know, I'm starting to relate to all the UK people. So it's just a case about having a relation with the fans, and the best way for me to have that relation with the fans is, you know, as we're talking about card placement here, you put me higher up on a card, I get a big win. Or if it's on a main card where I'm in the main spotlight, I get on the mic and start talking. Well, bang, there you go. You put those two together, and then in terms of traction and be able to sell to people in the UK, I'll be able to do that more. You know, UFC Europe always posts my stuff. So, you know, that's obviously going out there, being brought out into the public's face. But you know, ultimately, I've got to go out and win impressively. I do that, then my marketability goes up. I can chat a lot more shit. I can say what I've got to say, do what I have to do, be emphatic, be vibrant, eccentric, as you know I am, and then boom, everything's fine. And the thing is, you don't even have to force it. I think the main thing is just to be relatable to people, just being who you are, you know. And you know, people know me to be a bit of a crazy motherfucker. So I think this just goes hand in hand, and I'm looking forward to it, man. Like I say, I do feel UK fans don't. Not as many UK fans know much about me. Obviously, when you've got an Irish person or an English person, they're going to be a bit more backed up behind it. But that's absolutely fine. My time will come. Again, I just work on myself, improve my skill set, and then we'll go out there, put on a show, and then I can get some more love from a wider range of UK people. But for the most part, mate, I've had nothing but love. So I'm extremely grateful for the people that have tuned in.
Yeah, I should have said that when I asked you the question, in that like I'm not calling for people who are already, you know, listening to this or following you on social media to do more. Like, that love is fantastic and great to see. But for me, I wonder whether to me, I think, and I don't know this for sure, but it feels like it is the lack of you not being able to fight on one of the London cards. That feels like the moment it would click. Like in a similar vein, I remember watching Arnold Allen for so long and being like, this guy is incredible, and yet he just didn't seem to get any kind of love. And his personality was fun, a great fighter to watch, a legitimate contender in his division, but he just hadn't had the moment to show people those things. And like he'd fought in the UK before, even like I remember watching him in Liverpool against Mads Burnell, and like he had some fights in the UK before. But then that co-main he got on the card that went huge, where there was tons of finishes and stuff, when he finished Dan Hooker, it finally felt like that fight week people were like, who's this guy that we've got from the UK? Like, not only can he fight, he's a funny dude, he's relatable. And it was just like, now, you know, then he wins that, and the fight with Calvin Cater was unfortunate, but then the fight with Max Holloway and everyone's behind him, you know, it just felt like that one moment. And I feel like, in the same way that when I first interviewed you way back for Cage Warriors, when I didn't expect you to be able to speak full English, or not, let alone speak full English, be just like have a conversation with you like any other English fighter that I speak to. Like that moment clicking in London for everyone would be amazing. And I feel like that is the one thing maybe that's missing, is people might see your highlights and things like that on social media, but it's different when, I mean, for a start, there's a big difference between people that might pay to go and watch an event and they might not tune into the UFC if it's in, you know, Brazil, for example. Like that. And so when it's in their face, then they got no
Yeah,
other choice but to relate and connect with it, you know, when it's physically in front of them. And I feel like that will be a huge moment. And I really hope you get that in March. I assume they'll be back. Like, it feels
yeah.
like it has to happen, especially off the back of 3 wins.
Well, this is it, and that'll be my way to sort of stake my claim towards the top 15, winning 2 more fights with impressive finishes, with impressive wins. That's what's going to get me towards the top 15. And then when you got another UK guy in the top 15, that's when people are going to start to pay attention. And like I say, obviously, you put me on a mic, you know, it's like bread and butter. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I can just go, I can just flow. Not as much as Will, I have to admit. Will is a little bit better at that. I don't know. But he just kind of goes off on one. Like his brain just like goes all over the place, and
Yours tends to be more on a straight line, whereas Will's can change subjects like 15
very
times.
chaotic, but it's very entertaining. And
Yeah.
like I say, I do admire that quite a lot about him. And you know, so this is the thing, man. I just got to do what I got to do. I got to put on these performances, mate. And then you know, like I say, it's about being relatable, and then you know, being able to talk to some of the fans as well, like just kind of going out and about to places. And you know, the amount of people that actually have said like, Modestus, has been really amazing to see your comeback and stuff like this. That's been really heartwarming and touching to me, that people have paid attention to that. So you know, I have support from people, and like I say, I'm really glad and appreciative. And in order to get the next steps, the next stages, you know, like I say, to bring the following up even more, you just got to keep on doing your thing, keep on being a crazy, wacky geezer, and then next thing you know, things will just start to compound, and almost like a yeah, like an effect where it's like an explosion. So you know, I got to win, and I got to win big. So that's all I can concentrate right now. And the people that know me, then you know, even just like almost like word of mouth, like people more like kind of just talking around, you know, but on Twitter and stuff like this, and you know, if they can see you got an amazing performance and stuff like this, then they can talk about you more, and then they want to know more about you, and then that's when people start going into the media and this and that. So it's all a massive snowball effect. It's all the game. I freaking love it. You know, like I wouldn't have it any other way, and I'm looking forward to it, mate. This has all been a massive journey and a process, and it only will get better.
It's going to be cool for people who come across you and want to learn more about you to go back and, having not known about you at the time of the injury and coming back through K, to then get to go back and learn about that in like retrospectively.
Yeah.
That'll be cool as well, to be like, oh, this guy's on a win streak, but like he didn't just arrive in the, like, of course, everyone has different paths. That is an impressive thing as well, to arrive in the UFC and go 3-0 straight off the bat. But to then be able to go back and look at your story and the way that you've come back to get to this point is like, wait, I didn't know about this guy's story before, and I'm only knowing about him now because he's winning. Like, what's going on here? Like, that'll
Yeah,
be cool.
yeah, 100%. Really do take a lot of pride in what I have done. I know there's plenty more to be done. Like I say, I always keep very humble, because you know, as you saw, things could flip right round on its head at any given moment. So you've always got to, but you learn so many things in this life, and for me as well, like to kind of show people things that I've learned, and to tell people, like, I know a lot of the times people will learn the best through their own experience as opposed to someone else's. But even if it can give some motivation to leave an impact on the world in a way, do you know what I mean? Because you know I know it's not a big thing for some people, but for me, like, when I leave this earth, I want to have left a massive impact on this world in one way or another. And one way that I know I can do that is to show people that anyone can come back from any situation, anything that's really bad, really tying them down. They're suffering a lot in whatever situation. Know that you can turn it around, no matter how bad it is. You just believe in yourself, stay confident, stay true to your path, keep that vision strong in your head, and you can make things happen. It's just how bad you want to work towards making that happen, and how much you believe in yourself, even though no one else does. So in terms of, for people, even in terms of mental health wise, feeling depressed and down in the dumps, thinking that nothing's possible to come out of that hole that of which they are in, this is my way to show you, like, no, you can do it. You just got to believe in yourself. And I've often had people actually ask me on Instagram, like, Modestus, like, how, I'm facing this injury, I'm doing this, and I give my I give my 2 cents, my bits of advice, things that I've learned, things that I can pass on. I'm now almost like the old veteran, like, even though I'm still very young, I'm only 29, but I'm almost like the wise Yoda. Like, now I've got bits of advice that I can give to people, whereas when I was 24, I thought you kind of think you know it all already, when it's like, hell nah. Like, now I can tell people, and it's like I'm this kind of like this old geezer just floating, sitting on like a flying carpet or something with a do you know what I mean, with a mystic ball in front of me. You know what I mean? That's kind of like what I feel like right now in terms of the advice and the insight that I can give to people to help them in their own journeys. And essentially, at the end of the day, we're all just trying to become better people, trying to rise together. And, if we can make this world a better place by, more people being able to achieve things that they want to achieve after hardships, then, why not be an advocate for that? So, I want to leave my mark on this world, and I feel that would be one of the ways that I could do that.
Yeah, the mystic Moddy era. I'm all for it, man. That'll do it, I think, for episode 2. We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
There's a couple things I was going to get to, but they can come up at any point, so we will address
Mate, I
those
talk.
whenever.
I can talk the ears off a donkey, and you know that. So, mate, like I say, however many episodes it take, I've also got some really good ideas. So, some of my clients, this would be going sort of away from MMA, but I mean, it's still along the same lines of very successful people. Like, I've got a couple of like millionaire friends, right, and another one that's actually had a bit of a setback in one of his. And it's not really a massive setback. The guy still drives a Lambo. He's got an amazing house. Like, I literally trained him today, but it. I remember speaking to him, like, saying about my personal experience. It would be nice to have those kind of guys on as well.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
I've got so many businessmen that would really, it would be, they're lovely people, so they've got great personalities, and I really feel like it could give people some really useful insights into, like, the world of properties, and even like corporate jobs, and like I said, they're very funny personalities. So I would love for you to meet them, and for us to do that, because I think it'll give something different, because no one, do you know what I mean? People, they see the normal names that usually get thrown around. Do you know what I mean? But if you've got something intricate, something different, people are like, hold on a minute. And then, do you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah,
it's just a
exactly. Yeah.
thought. I've definitely, if obviously there's Will, like my coaches, my dad, there's plenty of people to go on there. But what I'm saying is that, obviously those type of people just gives a bit of like a, almost like just outside the box sort of sort of views. And like I say, when we put the questions together and what things we're going to ask, I think it'd be really interesting, even for me. Do you know what I mean? Because I've heard some of the things that they've said, but even for me, I think it'd be great and good for the fans, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like it's called Gladiator Diaries, but that's just about like that title doesn't mean exclusively fighting because you do more than just fight. Now, of course,
Yeah,
it's a huge part of your life, but like
yeah.
there is a life outside of it as well. So no, totally, man. That sounds
Mate, this
interesting.
tag team is going to be sick.